Aloha, this is Richie Peckner, Maui resident. Just finished 3 rounds with Fred Green here on the island. This is Golf Smarter, episode 996.
When you ask me what's more important, where should I spend my time, chipping or putting? There's a lot more variability in chipping because you have different lies. On the putting green, you have a pretty good lie. But there's so much when a ball is not on a green that you have to understand. How your club interacts with the ground, what kind of bounce you have on your wedges. Is it into the grain? Is it down grain? The other day I was giving a chipping lesson and I said, you have a couple options here. First, look at the grass on the green. And part of it was kind of this pale, shiny look to it. And the other one was deep green. I said, well, the deep green is into the grain and then you have down grain. So where are you going to land it? Because if you land it in the grain, it's going to kill it. If you land it down grain, it's going to skid on you. How are you going to manage this shot? And so a big variability, just get where the ball is going to land on the green. And the person was like, well, I never even thought about that. And sure enough, he hits his first one into the down grain area, skids and goes about 15 feet past, hits his next shot a little shorter, lands into the grain, ends about 10 feet short. And he didn't miss hit either one of them, but he's not going to make a 2. He's going to make a 3. So how are we going to manage that?
Master your game like it's presented on TV, one shot at a time. And their old friend Josh Zander.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Josh.
Well, thank you for having me again, Fred. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, it sounds so good. You got a real microphone.
Yeah,
Everyone can
I'm all
hear you now.
teched up, baby. Let's go.
Just in time for episode 1000.
Just for you, Fred.
Listen, I made a list, not a long list. I made a short list of the people I want to have come back leading up to episode 1000 or hovering around episode 1000. And you are very high on the list, my friend, because every time you're on, my game improves for at least 2 months.
Well, then maybe I just need to be on every 2 months.
Well, okay. I think we
That's
can
not a bad. It's not a bad
no, we
schedule.
can do that. No, I mean you're such a articulate and well thought out coach that everything that comes out of your mouth is like, oh, that's what that means. So I love having you on. Ever since we first met at a clinic you were giving.
Short game clinic a long time ago now.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for being a regular.
Sure.
And for sharing all your wisdom with us. But let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So I read recently that different things, but one says trying to eliminate doubles is easier than trying to make more birdies. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think it's all about how you're, you've got the Golf Smarter podcast, how to play smarter. And one of the things about trying to make birdies is you're starting to probably take more risks than are necessary. So I tell people, listen, if a tour player makes half their 8-footers, once they're outside of 8 feet, they're missing more than they make. How often are you hitting an approach shot in the green, say from 150, even 150 yards, and you're going after a pin? You're going to have to get it within 10 feet to have a reasonable chance of making a birdie. But it's pretty easy to 2-putt from 25 or 30 feet if you've got reasonable lag putting skills. So why take the risk? Because if you try to go for a tuck pin and you end up short-siding yourself, that's where you start making double bogeys. So stop trying to make birdies, hit the, I always like, hearing what Tiger and Jack Nicklaus have to say, make an aggressive swing to a conservative target, hit the correct part of the green, the fat side of the green, as we like to call it. And if you happen to miss, you might miss on the side that the flag's on, then you have your easy birdie putt. But you got to understand that every shot has a dispersion pattern. And if you aim to a dangerous pin and your dispersion pattern, part of that is in a difficult place, that's when you start making double bogeys. I like Johnny Miller years ago called it, you got your red light flags, your green light flags, and your yellows, right? So you always go after the greens. Those are the ones that are in the safe parts of the green. You never, ever go on the reds. And if you happen to be on, you could do some yellows. If you're like, man, I'm dialed in today. That was like Johnny Miller's way of thinking about it. I would take it a step further and say, if you're really a smart golfer, like Tiger, you would probably not even go after the yellows. You'd have the kind of discipline to not go after the yellows because it's so hard to recover from a double bogey. So I use this example. I say, listen, let's say you doubled the first hole. Let's say you're a tour player and you doubled the first hole because you went after a pin you shouldn't have gone after. Okay, now you're 2 over par. In order for you to get back to even just by the 9th hole, imagine the next 8 holes were 480-yard par 4s, which are kind of short par 4s for the tour players these days. From 100 yards away, actually from 80 yards away, a tour player will score 2.75. Okay, so a quarter of a shot under par, like on a little par 3, right? So imagine the next 8 holes were 480 yards and you could drive the ball in the fairway 400 yards. Now you're 80 yards away. Now by the 9th hole, you're back to even. So nobody drives it in the fairway 400 yards anyway. That shows you how horrible a double bogey is for a tour player, right? To recover from. Just to get back to even. And usually even after 9, you're already trailing in the tournament anyway. So as a weekend golfer, if you can start taking some of those doubles off the scorecard just by playing smarter, not by getting any better at golf, just being a better decision maker, you're going to make your birdies here and there. Don't force the birdies. Just play smart, golf smarter.
He figured it out.
Yeah. It takes, it's easy for us to sit here.
I was waiting to see if you were going to do it or if I was going to do it.
It's easy for us here in an office, talking about it and not being emotional about it. But if you could manage yourself as a human being, which is a huge skill on the golf course, and be disciplined enough to say, even though I'd like to make a birdie on this hole, I'm still not going to shoot for it. I'm not going to shoot for that pin. That's being super disciplined. I was listening to Russell Henley talk about his practice sessions, and he mentioned that when he gets his TrackMan out there, he'll set a target and then he'll hit 5 shots 10 yards right of it, 5 shots 10 yards left of it, because he goes, we rarely shoot at pins. We're always shooting to one side of the green or the other based on what the appropriate shot is. And there's a guy who's like Mr. Methodical, and he plays really smart golf. He's not the most talented guy out there. He's got a heck of a golf swing, but he's not the most powerful. And what is he ranked? Top 10 in the world now? I mean, he's crazy good, but just super smart. So you get these two talented players next to each other, and one makes a smart decision and one makes an aggressive decision. You can call it a not so golf smarter decision. Then, that might be the difference between, you're winning the tournament or you're missing the cut, just decision making. So that's a huge part of it. And it's a skill that I think people think, I got to get better at golf. I got to hit it straighter. I got to chip it better. All that stuff is true, but hey, I got to be a better decision maker. And then hold yourself accountable. Like after the round, think to yourself, if you could take like 5 minutes after a round and take the emotion out of it and say, where could I have saved shots? What, just in my decision making, what could I have done to, save shots? Could I have saved shots on 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever the holes that you quote unquote messed up on? It's like, what could I have done differently there? Just decision making, not talent wise, not better technique, just what could I have done? And you might save yourself quite a few shots there. So there's a long answer to a short question.
It's okay. I love the long answers because you get into stuff that you don't even know you were going to get there, and you do. I guess I'll never forget that you once explained that if you shoot over the green, if you miss the green behind, you're getting double bogey. And I'll never forget that.
Right. It's the worst place to miss a green. I mean, I'm sure the story's been told by me on your podcast, but my golf coach in college, Wally Goodwin, rest in peace, he said, if you don't know what to do, please miss short, because you can always chip up a hill. You can always hit a bunker shot, but you're over a green, you're in somebody's backyard, a cart path, a flower bed, a downhill lie, going to a green that runs away from you. It's where scores go to die, behind the greens.
So the most common question for teachers with students when a student comes in, what are you looking for? The question is always either greater distance or more consistency, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like a broken
after
record.
this many interviews, I've heard this numerous times from a variety of coaches.
Yeah.
They either want more consistency or greater distance. And they're not willing to do the physical workout that is required to get greater distance. You don't get it from a ball. You don't get it from a club. You get it from your body. right?
Most important piece of equipment is you.
Is you.
Yeah. You can get,
And-
you can definitely get clubs that fit you better and clubs that you can swing faster, but there's a certain point where there's a diminishing return there. And I used to have a fitness professional, his name is Chris Thompson, come in and help me with my junior clinics. And he would look at everybody and say, okay, what's the most important piece of equipment? And they'd be like, driver, putter, chip, wedge. He's like, nope, it's you. It's
Yep.
you. And then how are you feeding that piece of equipment during a round? Are you hydrating it? Are you nourishing it? All that kind of stuff. It's like we kind of gloss over that pretty quickly.
Yeah. So on the consistency part, how many teachers, when someone says, I want more consistency, how many teachers say, all right, then we have to improve your decision making, right? You got to be a more consistent golfer. You've got to, and if you want that to be reflected in your scorecard, then you've got to make better decisions. It's not about hitting the ball.
Right.
Do coaches ever say that? Maybe on a playing lesson, but.
Well, yeah. And sometimes I'll put it to the answer is, I'm sure there are plenty of coaches out there that do, performance coaches, and all around good golf instructors who are literally coaching their students to be better players. So one of the things I say to people when they first come and see me, and I'm kind of trying to figure out what they want, because really it's about what they want, not about what I want.
Yeah.
So I want to find that out. But if they want to be a better scorer, right? We have to talk about the decision making. I said, listen, what if I'll ask them a question like, okay, what's your index? Okay, I'm a 10, your average score, whatever, somewhere in the mid 80s. And I said, okay, what if we were doing a reality show? And I said, okay, a year from now, you and I have to go on TV and you have to break 80 and you're counting every shot. How are we going to approach this? My reputation's on the line as a coach. You don't want to embarrass yourself in front of the world, right? You got to break 80 and you're a 10 right now, but a year from now, let's say we get you down to like a 5 or 6 and you can go break 80. Like, well, how would we go about that? How would we spend our time?
Mm-hmm.
Would we be out here trying to make your 5-iron go straight every time? Where would we spend our time? Would it be on the golf course? How would we actually go about this? Now the pressure's on, right? Performance. How are we going to perform, right? So one of the biggest things, how do you manage yourself as a human being on the golf course? Because you might have all the skills, and I think we've talked about this before, but it's like, how are you able to access your skills when it comes time to perform? What kind of state of mind are you going to put yourself in? Are you nervous? Of course you're nervous. How do you manage your nerves? Are you doing breathing exercises? How do you recover from a bad break mentally, right? How do you stay in the present? I like to tell people, and forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I think that you should play golf more like how we watch golf on TV. You watch golf on TV, you're like, okay, let's watch Adam Scott hit his drive on number 3. Now let's go watch, John Rahm chip it on 12. And let's go watch Jordan Spieth putt his ball on 14, right? So we're going from individual shot to individual shot. So every shot's like its own little adventure, right? And you get immersed in, this is a left to right downhill putt. He's going to have to hit it softly. And, the grain's going this way. And so we're all into that shot. We're present to that moment. We're not saying, oh God, I double bogeyed the last shot. I can't believe I 3-putted it. Now it's all this influence is happening on this current shot because you're carrying all this baggage. But you're not carrying the baggage when you say, oh, Adam Scott is hitting his drive on 3. Is he going to try to cut the corner? What's he going to do? What's the wind doing? You're present to that moment. And the more you can play golf like that, like a series of individual golf shots without any emotional baggage, from what's happened before or what you're afraid might happen in the future, which is also not being in the present, right? So when we talk about that reality show, it's like, we need to get this person to be a performer, to be somebody who access their skills, somebody who can stay in the present, somebody who, we're going to work on your skills. We're going to make sure that you don't chip it, you don't scull your chips and, blade your bunker shots or leave we got to do all that work too. But ultimately, we have to access it, because what good is having it if you don't access it? And that's about how you manage yourself as a human being. So I think we would fail on the reality show if we didn't address that. And you know what? these days, there's so many people who specialize in all these different parts of the game, right? You have like Rick Sessinghouse and Pia Nielsen and Lynn Marion, people like that who are awesome at helping people access their skills, right? Their mental skills, their performance skills. And you have other people who are amazing at helping people with technique. And then you have the what do you call it? The Swiss Army knives coaches that kind of help a little bit with everything. Which is what I feel like I can help people with all parts of the game. I do not claim to be the biggest expert on explosive power, or the biggest expert on putting. There are putting specialists, there are power specialists, but depending on what you feel you need, you can. I think of myself when I'm coaching as like, I can help you with every part of the game, but if there's somebody else who can do something that helps that, I'm like, no ego involved. I'm like, hey, let's get that person on our team. If that person's going to help us, win the prize on the reality show, then let's call that person up and bring them in. Because just like it takes a village to raise a kid, and we have two of them, so we know we got a big village around us helping us. I think same thing with golfers. I think that there are a lot of resources out there. So let's get that. Let's get that sports psychologist. Let's get that team. Just because you're not on the tour doesn't mean you can't have a team of people who can help you. And I feel like we can all kind of chip in to help you get to where you want to be. And
you mentioned a minute ago about how we should be playing to the green, red light, yellow light, green light, to the fat part of the green, and then just getting your two putt in. But in our practice sessions, should we spend more time, because of being amateur golfers who probably don't have our distances dialed in the way we should, and so we think we hit the ball farther than we do, so we end up coming up short a lot, right? Yeah. We're chipping up to get close to try to par the hole. Lag putting versus short chips around the green. Where should more time be spent working? What is going to be more valuable to us in the long run?
So the answer to every golf question, right? Is, as Mike Adams says, it depends. That's the answer to every golf, right? So I don't know. Are you a really good lag putter but a poor chipper? Spend more time chipping, and vice versa, right? So they're both important skills. You want to try to get them to be a 2-shot deal instead of a 3-shot deal in both cases, right? So one of my other mentors, Mike LeBeau, we were talking about years ago, this is probably in the early 90s, we were talking about this. He's like, you know what a single-digit golfer is? And maybe I've mentioned this on the show again, so I repeat my stories, but
that's okay. I do it more than you do.
A single-digit golfer is somebody who drives their ball on the property at a reasonable distance, so you're not out of play with your tee shot, gets the second shot somewhere around the green, and has a disaster-free short game. So no skulls, no chunks, no 3 putts, or fewer 3 putts. That somebody can play golf, reasonably in play, reasonably somewhere around the green. You don't have to hit 10 to 12 greens around. To be a single-digit golfer, you can hit 4 or 5 greens around if you have a reasonable short game and you don't get penalty strokes and drive it out of play. It's really not that tough of a formula. But when you add the fact that we're human beings playing golf and we get upset and we have to manage ourselves and all that kind of stuff, it gets more difficult. But I definitely want all my students to understand how to make solid contact on short game shots and how to be able to read lies. Reading lies is a huge skill. What every lie tells a story. So what story is this lie telling you? So the other day I'm teaching this little 10-year-old girl who was in from Korea. It was really, she's awesome. And she would, we were talking about uneven lies and weird lies around the greens. And I said, every lie tells a story. So I said, hey, this golf ball is talking to you right now. So I said, I'm the golf ball and I'm talking. Boy, there's so much grass around me right now. It's going to be really hard to get this club to hit me. That player better firm up their wrists so this club doesn't get twisted by this grass that's all around me. And that club better come in steeper, because if it doesn't come in steeper, it's not going to get to the bottom of me and I'm not going to get up in the air. So that kind of sounds kind of stupid, ridiculous. She's laughing as I'm saying this to her, but I'm like, this ball is talking to you. It's telling you. what needs to happen here. And if you don't understand how to read a lie, you can make what you think is a good swing and hit a horrible golf shot. So being a good player is about being able to analyze the lie, understand how the club needs to be working in order to be efficient out of that lie, and then how it affects your distance control, and so on and so on and so on. So that comes with some education from your coach, but a lot of experimentation. The great short game players, they compete with their friends and they put balls in. Remember when Noda and Tiger were at Stanford, and they used to have short game contests and just give themselves the worst possible lies and see who could get themselves out of it and put some money on it. That's how you really get good at it. I had a chance to play a serendipitously.
Wait a minute, that wasn't college students putting money on.
No, I think it was push-ups or
Okay.
sit-ups. I don't think they were putting money on it. This is the story, right? So I think that kind of stuff, like when you ask me, what's more important, where should I spend my time, chipping or putting? I think there's a lot more variability in chipping because you have different lies. On the putting green, you have a pretty good lie. So, and yet you do have to read grain, you have to read break, you have to understand speed and all that kind of stuff. But there's so much when a ball is not on a green that you have to understand. How your club interacts with the ground, what kind of bounce you have on your wedges. Is it into the grain? Is it down grain? The other day I was giving a chipping lesson and I said, you have a couple options here. First, look at the grass on the green. And part of it was kind of this pale, shiny look to it. And the other one was deep green. I said, well, the deep green is into the grain and then you have down grain. So where are you going to land it? Because if you land it in the grain, it's going to kill it. If you land it down grain, it's going to skid on you. How are you going to manage this shot? Right. And so a big variability just once the ball, where the ball is going to land on the green. And the person was like, well, I never even thought about that. And sure enough, he hits his first one into the down grain area, skids and goes about 15 feet past, hits his next shot a little shorter, lands into the grain, ends about 10 feet short. And he didn't miss hit either one of them, but he's not going to make a 2. He's going to make a 3. So how are we going to manage that? So those kinds of things. And that maybe is different than somebody saying, I need a chipping lesson because I tend to skull or chunk my chips, Like, yeah, okay, that's part of it. But how are we going to turn 3 shots into 2 and occasionally turn 2 shots into 1, which is kind of cool. I was at a conference one time and Matt Kuchar's got a great short game, was hitting some chips, and he kind of looks over at us. He goes, from where I'm chipping right here, guys I'm competing against will make it more than they'll make a 3. They usually make a 2, but they'll make it more often than they'll take 3 shots to get in the hole. Wow. So that's what he's competing against. You think he's not going to take care about what kind of lie he has, how his club's going to interact? I mean, the other thing he did, which I thought was really cool, was between every wedge shot he hit, he took a tee out of his pocket and he cleaned out the grooves. He never hit a shot without perfectly clean grooves. Right? And we're like, oh, I'm going to chip for half an hour, and you never cleaned your club once.
Yeah.
So how do you expect to really have your brain understand trajectory, spin, all that kind of stuff if you've got variability on your club face?
Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed about cleaning my clubs after every shot. For the last year or so, well, prior to that, my short game, I felt good about. I felt good about getting close to the hole for chipping up on the green. But in the last year, it's disappeared. I chunk, I skull it, I double hit it, right? It'll hit it and then hit it again while it's still in the air. And I've been just frustrated. My confidence is shot there. Walking up to the ball, I'm like, oh no, as opposed to, oh, I love this shot.
Right.
And then, boy, this is not where I want to go, but I saw a video on YouTube, but it was Phil Mickelson, who is a phenomenal instructor as far as his videos and how he explains things. And he was talking about making sure that your lead hand for a right-hand golfer, it's your left hand, the wrist doesn't break. And you keep it, the arm and the hand out. I don't know if I'm explaining this properly, but I watched him do it, and I went in my, I have a short game practice area in my yard, and it was working.
Nice.
And, he says, here, if you want to get more height on it, put it in the front of your stance.
Yep. He likes forward and back. He doesn't like anything in the middle. He's like, are you trying to hit it low or are you trying to hit it high? Make a decision.
Right. But don't break the wrists. Keep your lead wrist firm, and don't break your wrist. And it was working. Now I haven't had a chance to get to the course with it, but I'm practicing it a lot.
Right.
You agree?
You know the answer to every question, right?
It depends.
Yeah, it depends what your mistake is, right? So I go into every lesson with a very with no preconceived notions. I just want to see what the person's doing.
Yeah.
And once I understand what the person's doing, it may need to be more of a firm lead hand and don't break down your wrist, but maybe something totally different. It could be swinging on a plane that's so incorrect that their low point's in the wrong place. They could have a pressure shift issue where they're not moving to their lead leg. I mean, there's so many different variables. So I just, I did a talk years ago for the Northern California PGA where I said, when I was talking about how I go through a lesson, I said, the first thing I do is I interview to get information, but then I observe and I just wait. I wait to see exactly what this person needs before I give them any piece of advice. And it might only be waiting 5 seconds. I might not need that long, or I might need a few shots to be able to see what's going on and then help them understand why the shot is happening and then what they need to do in order to get the correct contact. And that's different from player to player. If I have somebody who's got so much lead arm, lack of breakdown, so to speak, where they cannot get the ball up in the air, even with their 60, because there's so little loft on it, I might actually tell them to break their wrists earlier, which would be heresy if you're talking about Phil Mickelson's thing. But we might be both trying to get them to the same place. But you got to understand, when you watch a video of Phil Mickelson saying how he does it, he doesn't get a chance to see what you currently do. You're in front of me and I get to see what you currently do and say, oh, that Phil Mickelson thing is perfect for you. Or if you do more of that Phil Mickelson thing, your ball is going to go racing across the green because you're not going to have any loft on your wedge anymore because you're leading so much with your lead arm. So again, I go back to it depends on what the player needs. And I think if Phil was here, you'd totally agree with me on that. I mean, Phil's a very bright, very, very, thoughtful person. And ultimately, what you want to do is you want to present the club in a way that helps it interact correctly with the ground and produces the trajectory and roll profile that you're looking for that particular shot. And then what do you need to do that? And in some cases, you may need more of what Phil's talking about. In some cases, you may need something different. I got, I don't know what the best word is, but I got a lot of grief on the internet when I actually said the exact opposite. I said, I try to get my lead wrist into a little bit more extension, a little bit more cupping position, especially if I'm trying to get this ball up in the air a little bit more. I need more loft. If I did the opposite, it would take loft off. But if I'm looking to get it more up in the air and I've got the bounce sliding, I can do that and get some softness on my shot, right? And they're like, no, you got to have your lead rest, or like what Phil Mickelson's saying, or whatever, more forward lean in your shaft and more downward strike. And I'm like, I'm really good at hitting this high soft pitch shot with a little bit more extension where the shaft is leaning backwards. So what I tell people is, listen, when I set up to hit a short game shot, I present a certain amount of loft I'd like to have at the moment of the strike. And then I want to make sure my club is stable enough and returns to that loft to produce the trajectory and roll I'm looking for that particular shot. So it's interesting. You hear a lot of, I'll share a story with you. I was playing at Olympic Club and I short-sided myself, because I went for a pin that I shouldn't have. Or actually, I wasn't trying to go for that pin. I just overhooked the golf ball. It's just not a good golf shot. And I ended up short-siding myself, which happens. And I hit this beautiful high soft pitch to about 2 feet. And the guy I was playing with said, oh, you got such soft hands. And I said, thank you. And my hands were so opposite of soft. My hands were on there like a vice because I wanted to make sure that the 90 degrees of loft, because I laid the lob wedge wide open, was going to be there at the moment of impact through the rough. So my hands were anything but soft. The ball came off super soft, fluffy, landed like a deflated beach ball, as they like to say, right? Butterfly with sore wings. It was a beautiful high soft shot. I'll brag about it, but my hands were not soft. My forearms were super strong, very pressurized to stabilize that club face to the position I needed to produce the exact trajectory I was looking for to hit that shot. And I guarantee you, I did not have a lot of forward lean in the shaft, because if I did, it wouldn't have been a high soft shot. So again, it goes back to, it depends on what you're trying to do with the shot.
All right, here's another line that I read recently. I love, like when I see something, I'll pull it out and hold it off, and I'll go through it on almost every interview, but you're the one that I really love to ask these questions. So this line said, for amateurs, assume a mishit shot travels closer to 10% shorter, so that a 150-yard shot goes just shy of 140 yards. When there's trouble short, budget accordingly. So we think, I've got 150 yards. That's going to be my 7-iron, right? Because one time I hit my 7-iron 149 yards. So I'm going to pull it out, and not even considering that I'm maybe in the rough on that, and it's wet and it's against grain. Talk about decision-making on club selection.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. I think a lot of it is being able to assess the lie. I think a lot of it is managing your ego. I think a lot of it is being organized. When I say organized, there are so many devices out there where you can measure your distances now. That it doesn't take a lot of money to know how far your ball goes these days. And back when I was playing professionally in the early 90s, I was working on my distance wedges with, I'd gone to the Dave Pell School, and he was helping me measure everything. And I literally went out with one of my teammates from Stanford, and we went out and measured our yardages, and we went to the hardware store and got one of those wheels where we wheel out and foot by foot, and then put down towels at every 5 yards. And then one of us would be out there charting it as we hit. Now you got a little device you put behind your ball and say, that one went 63 yards. That one, you need to know how far you hit the golf ball, and you need to be honest with yourself. Okay, I'm practicing at 70 degrees and sunny. It's not going to be the same when it's 50 degrees and, thicker air, foggy, whatever, denser air. It's not going to go as far. So, and windy conditions, you need to take all that stuff into account. What's the lie? Is the grass growing with me? Is the grain growing against me? Do I have a clean access to the back of the ball? There's all this stuff. It's like, my 7-iron might go 150, but in which condition does it go in 150, right? So you need to be smart about that. And then you need to make good decisions if there is trouble in front. What's your, you got to account for the fact that you might miss it a little bit. And you can't account for a disaster shot. There's no strategy that allows you to account for a disastrous shot, right? Like total chunking or sculling is like, you can't plan for that. But if I hit a reasonable shot and it's not going to go quite my usual distance, am I still going to be okay? You're going to have to take that into account. But in the back of my mind, I always go back to what we talked about earlier today, which is if you flush one and it goes over the green, that's a double at best, right? So you need to be careful with that. So I don't know if there's a great answer, but just know that you're not a machine. You're not perfect. You're not going to hit every ball on the button. You're not going to hit it always like how far your best shot would go. So just know that. Just be smart about it. Don't, put your ego aside and say, what's the club that's going to get me to where I need to be and help me score reasonably on this hole and not put myself in harm's way by just making, again, a decision that's ego-based, worried about outcome, worry about score. What will they think of me? All that stuff that interferes. It's like, nobody needs to know you hit a 7-iron when people think you should hit an 8-iron there. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And there's so many products out there now that, from ShotScope, Arcos, Game Golf, all these different things that if you are willing to take the time after your round, it's going to tell you a lot of information about how you did and give you insights into what you possibly should be working on and where your errors are. Are you a fan? Do you advocate that?
Yeah, I think that's great. Any information that can help you make better decisions, I'm in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Another line I read recently, instead of focusing on the 22% of your game that isn't going right that day, take the glass half full approach.
Yeah.
appreciate the 78% of your game that is working for you, and have the awareness to play towards your strengths for that day, because every round is different.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. But I do also think that you need to be aware of where your weaknesses are. And I'll go back to before all these great apps we have now to chart all of our stats. I used to do it all with pencil and paper when I was playing college and professional. And what I would do is I would look at where I thought were the deficiencies after I took the statistics. And then I'd go to my coach. At that point, it was Rick Rhodes up at San Francisco Golf Club. Say, Rick, I'm struggling with this part of my game. And then we'd focus on that. So I'd come to my coach prepared with what my weaknesses were. And those were evident based on what the statistics told me. And for whatever reason, I don't know how this came to me, but I'm like, okay, if I'm going to play professional golf, if I want to win a professional tournament, if I could average 68 for 4 days and shoot 60 under par, I'm going to be in the mix. And then I would see basically what the anatomy of a 68 was. And it wasn't anything crazy, right? It was just being reasonable in all these different categories. And now we've got it to the point where it's even, more sophisticated with all the great apps and tools that we have to be able to measure everything. And depending on what you are, whether you're, somebody who's just trying to break 90 or break 80 or break 100, there's just reasonable expectations in each part of your game that you can refer to, and then go to your coach armed with that. Like, hey, coach, not just what my last round was, but if you look at my last 10 or 15 rounds, there's a trend here. There's a trend that, my chips are averaging 12 feet from the hole. Well, it's probably gonna be a 2-putt. What if we got that? What if we can get that to 7 or 8, and all of a sudden some of those become up and downs? And so if you get a little bit better in every category, you're going to improve. Just improving your skill set. It's like what I tell like almost all golfers, but especially juniors. I'm like, what can you do today that makes you just a little better than you were yesterday? What kind of decisions can you make? How's your practice going to be a little bit better today just to make you better than you were yesterday? And just keep comparing yourself to yourself and keep making your weaknesses less weak. It's nice to have strengths. We have to maintain those, but really come armed to a lesson with an understanding of where you should spend your time. So if you're taking an hour lesson, the coach isn't trying to figure it out for the first 20 minutes, what's going on. It's like, let's get to work.
Mm-hmm. So let's get to finding the right coach. What elements are we looking for in the process of finding a coach? And that doesn't mean like, oh, there's a guy who teaches nearby here, I'm just going to go to him.
Right.
I'm sure that you have to go shopping. You got to do your research just like you do with any retail product.
Yeah.
This is a service, and you want the best person who's going to serve you in that service.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways to find out about the coach these days beforehand. Just Google them, right? Find out, what they do. There's a lot of social media out there. I've got Instagram, YouTube, things like that. I mean, coaches are out there for you to kind of see what their style is. Things like what we're doing right now, like podcasting, and you hear what kind of philosophy the coach might have, and see if there's a match there. And then the best way is just go take a lesson, and you may not need to ever see them again, but just go take a lesson, see if the communication is what you like. I think there's also an onus on the player to hold the coach accountable to what they're actually looking to do. Like, I learned early on in my coaching career not to have expectations for where I wanted my students to go. I really want to meet them for what they want to do. I had a student when I was teaching back for Golf Digest in New Jersey. He just wanted to have a beautiful swing. He was a wonderfully dressed person, hair perfect, cologne. I mean, he was a model looking guy, and he wanted an Adam Scott model looking swing. And when I met him, he was a 4. And when I left New Jersey 2 years later, I think he was an 8. But his golf swing looked beautiful, and he was happy as a clam. We never touched his short game. We just made his swing beautiful. Now, that would not have been I can't tell you how many times I told him, His name is Tom. I won't say his last name. I said, Tom, we need to work on your short game. Because he finished runner-up in his club championship, before I met him, and he couldn't sniff it afterwards. And I could not convince him to work on his short game, putting, chipping, pitching, because he just wanted a beautiful swing. And he ended up, I met his expectations. He had a beautiful swing. If I would have, I don't want to make my students unhappy, but that's not a typical student. A typical student might say something different. Like you might, I don't know what your current index is, Fred, but I'm sure you're a very curious person. You love to learn, and you probably like, what can I do, Josh, to make what is your index these days?
10.
I would love to be a 7 a year from now. What can I do? Right.
Play the closer tees.
Play closer tees. Well, that's part of it too. Hey, I no longer like playing the tips. I've done that.
You.
I've been there, done that. I go one up from the tips now. But yeah, so when I say the student, I would say the student needs to hold the coach accountable. What I mean by that, and I've talked about this for years, I never will say anything to a student that doesn't either improve the quality of the contact or the shot. I don't do anything for decoration when it comes to teaching. This one case with Tom was like, I learned my lesson on that. And if that's the person who's coming for a lesson, it's not a fit. I want to make my students better. But I want them to get out of it what they want to get out of it. But I think one of the things I ask my students when they come see me is, do you want to understand why something is happening? Or do you just want me to tell you what to do? Because I'm always willing to defend my point of view. When I see something, this is why your ball is doing this. This is how to fix it. And the reason it's doing this is because of X, Y, or Z. And when we do this, it will go away. And trust me on this, but this is how it's going to work. And I'm confident in my abilities to be able to diagnose just about anything out there. We have great tools now. I've got 30 years of experience. I know how this is going to happen. Some people say, you know what? Thanks for letting me know that. I just want to get right to it. I don't want to understand it. My ideal student, if I had to create one, would be somebody who's super curious, somebody who wants to know the why, somebody who down the road wants to fire me because I have armed them with all the things they need to know to be able to be their own best coach. That would be kind of the ideal student. And that doesn't mean that student won't stay with me for years, because we enjoy each other's companies and we can always get better at different parts of the game. But basically, if I have a student who's been with me for a long time and they're hitting certain shots, and I'll ask them questions. This is one thing I learned from Rick Rhodes years ago, the Socratic method. Well, Josh, I'm hitting this. Well, why do you think that's happening? Why is your divot going this direction? Why is your ball flight start? Why is the ball starting this direction? Why is it spinning too much? So ask them a lot of questions, because I know they already know the answers. I just need to get them in touch with it, because I've taught this to them. And they need to be able to, when they're on the golf trip with their pals in South Carolina, to be able to, hit a few shots and go, oh, I'm back to this thing. I need to adjust my grip, or I need to adjust the ball position, or my stance position, or how I'm shifting my weight, because I know how to fix this now, because Josh has armed me with the skills to be able to do that. And that's when the student goes, hey, I can fly now, right? I don't necessarily need my coach. And almost to the point like a Bubba Watson who never had a coach. Like Bubba Watson can fix his ball flight. He knows what to do. He doesn't necessarily need a coach to tell him why. I definitely needed a coach to tell me why. I did not have that instruction when I was younger. My coach was not armed with that information. He was the most wonderful person, mentor, supportive person, but didn't have the technical skills. And then I had some amazing mentors that helped me understand the technical skills. And I want to pass that along to my students so they can become their own coach. And halfway through a round, when they're struggling, they can turn it around. Or after the round, they can figure it out. And that learning process just makes you that much stronger of a player, because you're like, hey, I can go anywhere, anytime, And if I'm struggling, I know how to get out of it. And if you're the student who always needs to call the coach because you don't know what to do, then the coach probably didn't do their job, in my opinion. So I half kiddingly say I'm trying to get myself fired here, but I kind of am, because I don't want to hold anything back. I want to make sure you understand, and then I'm going to arm you with some skills to be able to fix yourself, because golf is always. I was explaining this to a student the other day. Golf is always a matter of tweaking things. And for those of us who are old enough to remember there were dials on a radio to tune in the station without the static, right? A lot of kids have no idea what that is. That's what we're always doing. We're always just tweaking little things to get that contact that much sweeter, that ball flight to just curve that much more. It's always a matter of tweaking things. And there's no such thing as, oh, I got it, now I don't have to worry about it anymore. Because we're not machines, we're human beings, and we change. And it's a constant. You got to love the process of going through the process. And if that's not fun for you, then you're probably in the wrong sport, because that's what it is. All you have to do is go to a tour event and follow a tour player through their week, whether it's going to the fitness trailer, whether it's managing what they eat, how they eat during the round, whether it's adjusting to the green speeds of that particular week, or the conditions are, where the ball's not flying as far because maybe you're at Pebble Beach and it's foggy and it's windy, and constantly tweaking things. Maybe the ball position has to go back a little bit because you need to flight your ball a little bit lower, and how that affects how the ball is going to curve. And you're constantly doing this. And then the next week you're in a different place, and all of a sudden the greens are different, and the weather's different, the altitude's different, and you're constantly tweaking. And these are outside elements. And then that doesn't even bring in the fact that, you tweaked your back a little bit, walking down the stairs the other day, and so now your body's not quite feeling so that little, that feel that you had 2 weeks ago is not quite there anymore. Now we need a different feel to produce the same ball flight that you had before, right? So there's always that kind of tweaking and adjusting and monitoring and dialing in what you're looking to do to be the best golfer you can be on that particular day. And then you wake up the next day and you do it again, and enjoy the process of doing that again. Whether you're a 15, 20 handicapper or trying to make a living doing this, you're a human being trying to constantly adjust that. And part of the coach's job is to help people understand your ball. Like I was saying, the lie tells a story. Your ball flight tells a story, right? There's a reason why. And so one of my close friends, Jeff Ritter, who's a great teacher, you may have spoken to him. I love when he tells somebody will hit a shot and he goes, "That's perfect." And what do you mean that was perfect? I just sliced it 40 yards. And that's the perfect way to slice the ball 40 yards. If you want to slice it 40 yards, that's perfect way to do it. So what you just did is the reason why that ball flight did what you did. Did what it did. So now how do you work back from the ball flight? What did the ball flight tell you that the club was doing? And what did you do to make the club do something to make the ball flight do that? That's golf, and enjoy the process of doing that.
Josh?
Yes, sir.
I smell bad. My clothes are wrinkled. My glove and shoes look very used, but I want a beautiful swing.
You know what a beautiful swing is?
Please.
It's the one that produces the ball flight you want.
Josh?
Yes?
I want a beautiful swing.
You know what? I may have told this story.
That's okay.
I'm looking for a functional swing. A functional swing is the one that produces the shot that you're trying to produce. You can have a beautiful swing and not hit the ball very well if it doesn't fit you. We've talked about biomechanical fits and matchups and stuff before on your show, and you could have a swing that totally does not suit you, and it may look pretty because you've made all the angles look right, and you cannot hit the ball solidly. You can't get your ball flight. It's like, good thing nobody told Matt Wolff that he needed a beautiful swing, or Lee Trevino, he needed a beautiful swing, or, Bruce Litsky, or, I'm dating myself with some of these references, but
you are.
There are, if you look at the old school guys, it wasn't about the swing because they didn't have video, right? You wanted it back in the Hogan days. If you wanted a beautiful swing, if you wanted to look at your swing, you had to film it, send it to the lab, and 2 weeks later you could make an adjustment. Right? Like,
and you can't go slow motion.
You can't go slow motion. So now, because we have all this, video, and we got so many other great tools beyond video, 3D in Sportsbox is an incredible tool now for instructors. I use it all the time. It's fabulous to understand all these different, basically 3D using video that gives you instant feedback on how much your body is turning, rotating, lifting. I mean, just like every possible thing you want to know is there. But I go back to what I was saying before. How much of that is relevant to you either hitting it more solidly or producing the proper ball flight? That's where the coach comes in. The coach is the guide that helps you understand that information. It's the Sherpa that keeps you from going down rabbit holes that you shouldn't be going down rabbit holes. We were talking about this before we came on the air here. One of my most important jobs is to keep you on the proper road, because think about how hard it is to build new motor patterns. And if you're going down a rabbit hole of trying to do something that doesn't fit what you need to do, you're spending so much time and effort going down the wrong road. And now you got to come all the way back and start again and try to do something different. And you just put all these repetitions into something that doesn't work for you. So part of the coach's job is to, what's the word I'm looking for? Is to keep you on path, streamline the process, make it as efficient as possible. So you're working extremely intelligently to get to where you want to go. And if you're not getting the proper information, or you're doing something because you saw this really cool video on YouTube that I don't know, Ludwig Oberg is doing this. Oh, I got to do that because, man, his swing's awesome. And I agree, his swing's awesome. But why does it work for him? And does it apply to you? Maybe not. If Matt Wolff would have watched Oberg's swing and tried to do that, maybe Matt Wolff wouldn't have finished second in the U.S. Open to Bryson at Winged Foot. It's like you need to do what's right for you, and oftentimes you need a coach who understands that to be able to make sure, hey, this is. I feel like I'm the person who can just save you a lot of time, or a qualified coach is a person who could help you save a lot of time, not going down the wrong path. Because it needs to apply to you. And a great litmus test is, as far as holding your coach accountable, ask the coach when they ask you to do something, be polite, but just ask them, is this going to make my contact more solid? Or is this going to help my ball flight? And if not, why am I doing it? Because there's no reason to do it if it's not doing one of those two things. One of my mentors, Jim Hardy, the tagline for his company is next ball better. The next ball needs to be better if you're doing the things that the coach told you to do that are going to help make that next ball better. And if you're going down the wrong road, if you're trying to, bow your wrist because John Rahm bows his wrist and he was the number one player in the world, and so was Dustin with a bowed wrist. Well, does the bowed wrist help you hit the next ball better? Does it fit your biomechanics? Because for some people, it's magic, and for other people, it's tragic. So you just got to make sure you understand what that is for you. And that's part of what you need to hold your coach accountable for. So there's so much information available for us, and it's all good information, but the question is it applicable to you? And that's I think where you need some kind of a helper, some kind of a coach to help you understand that. Right. If I was learning a different sport, I definitely would find a coach that would help me understand how can I get to where I want to go, and what's the closest point, the distance between those two lines that I can get me there the most efficiently, and I have limited amount of time, and how do I spend it, and that's how I would go. So when I'm taking a lesson, like I tell people, I'm the hardest person to take a lesson because I'm going to hold the coach accountable, because I know the minute they tell me one thing to do, I'm like, well, I've already done the math in my head. If I do that one thing, I know what's going to happen to my impact, because I've been there, done that. I've been doing it for the last 30 years, playing for the last 48. I'm going on half a century of golf knowledge in here. And so you tell me to do something, I kind of know what's going to be coming out on the outcome. It's not, and I'm going to hold you accountable for that. So I'm like, I'm not going to bow my wrist, or I'm not going to cut my wrist, or I'm not going to tuck my elbow. I'm going to, that doesn't, whatever, because I know what that's going to do to my ball flight and my quality of my contact. So that's how I approach every lesson. I help my students understand what they need to do to make them the best version of themselves and try to make that as efficient as possible for them.
You like Sportsbox AI?
I do.
Okay, so for those fans who are interested in more information on that, Ji Hei Lee was featured on on the podcast back in October 1st of last year, episode 967. The impact AI is already having on the revolutionizing golf training, and it was all about Sportsbox AI.
It's an amazing tool, and it needs to be used correctly, and it needs to be filtered by somebody who understands the information. So I think it's amazing with what you can do now with that technology and not have to like strap yourself up into I remember when I first did 3D and I had all these things, attached to me, and I felt like I was in outer space, it's like with all this stuff, and they're like, okay, go ahead and swing. I'm like, are you kidding me? And like you're really inefficient with the swing. I can't swing with all this stuff on. Now you don't have to. Now you just swing.
Yeah,
you can just do your thing. You do it anywhere on the golf course, on the range. It's a fantastic tool. GA's company is doing awesome with that.
That's great. That's good for her. I'm happy for them. And how do you feel about using golf simulators for giving instruction?
Do
you?
I don't. I teach everything outside. I don't have an indoor facility. I'm not saying I'm against. If I had the ability to have indoor and outdoor, I'd love to have that. I just don't at the facility where I am. So everything I do is outdoors. I think you have to be careful if you're only doing indoor lessons because you're hitting off a perfectly flat lie.
Right.
It's not necessarily. It's a good way to kind of work on some fundamentals, but it's not real life.
It's the range.
It's the range off of a mat, and even more controlled than that. There's not even any wind. It's like golf is a variable game, and there's zero variety when you go indoors with four walls hitting into a screen. And so, you might have a different, different pictures on the screen that you can hit to, but so there's some use to it. And boy, is it efficient in the sense that if you had one of those in your house or nearby, where you just go practice, and you're not worried about weather and worry about, there's a ton of advantages to it. But just realize you're not really learning golf. You're learning some technique about your golf swing, and you're getting some good feedback because you get spin rates and path and face and a lot of TrackMan type stuff information. But if you wonder why you do that and then you go to the golf course and you can't produce, it's because you're practicing that. You're not practicing golf. You're practicing how to swing. There's a place for it.
The decision making has been pulled away from it.
You could say some of the simulation type stuff can like give you different looks and wind conditions, and so you have to do some of the thinking, but did you get a chance to watch TGL at all? I haven't had a chance to I think I saw it once just for a couple minutes, so I really haven't had a chance to do it. Yeah.
I personally think that there's a big future in growing the game through simulator golf because, this new generation of golfers are used to things being quicker, shorter, easier, more social.
No doubt about that. That's definitely, I've in my career, I've kind of had the old school that I grew up with, and now this new school that's kind of happening, and it's growing the game of golf, and more people are out there, whether it's out at Top Golf hitting balls, into fun looking targets out there with music and drinks, and if that brings more people to the game, great. Simulators bring more people to the game, great. Just understand that they're kind of like different sports.
Yeah, but that's okay.
That's fine. Yeah, it's just whatever, as they say, whatever makes you happy, entertained, engaged. There's to each his own kind of thing, right? Yeah. I understand that golf it takes time. It takes you got to drive to course. But there's in this day and age, and I'm talking as a human being / parent, the ability to get away from your technology, be in a beautiful place, breathe fresh air, get some exercise, socialize, communicate, all those things. There's a lot there that I think people need to understand, that for your mental happiness, your state of mind, I don't think we were necessarily designed to be indoors in front of a screen as much as we are now. That's my personal opinion. And it's,
I'm laughing because I love it. It's like the old guys are now going, "Hey, kids, get back on my lawn."
Get back on my lawn. Yeah. I mean,
come back out on the grass.
I literally learned how to play golf. I dug a hole in my front yard, which was not very big, and I put a tennis can in there, and I got my wiffle balls, and I hooked it and sliced it around the avocado tree in our front yard. And I could do that for hours. And I was Tom Watson, and I was Jack Nicklaus, and I was, I was Calvin Pete, and I was truly playing and learning at the same time. And I didn't even realize I was learning, right? Because I was having so much fun just curving this wiffle ball and hitting it high and making it spin on the crabgrass in my front yard. And just, we had turtles. I would hit it around the turtle. I mean, it was true. It was true play.
Don't admit abusing turtles.
I wasn't abusing turtles. I was hooking it and those their shells don't get hurt by a wiffle ball landing on top of it. So, I mean, I just like when you talk to me about hitting a ball,
your head, man, you better stop
hitting a ball into a screen.
Peter calling me,
hitting balls into screens. That's if it grows a game, great. My advice would be at least spend some time out there with your friends in a beautiful place, spending some time away from your screen. The screen will be there when you get home.
Yep. Kids, get back on my lawn.
Yeah.
So tell people how to follow you, how to get in touch with you, where to watch you. You've got a lot going on.
I'm on Instagram and YouTube, and you can take online lessons with me on the Skillest app. I have a video library you can access on the Skillest app. So that's where you can find me if you're not local to the San Francisco Bay Area. I teach golf at Stanford. That's where I hang my shingle, so to speak. And but I'm definitely trying to reach more people through online through the Skillest app. So that's where you can find me and a lot of my information. You can take lessons remotely with me through that. And so anywhere you are in the world, I would love to help you and be
tell
that.
us where. I mean, is it Josh Zander Golf? Is it Zander?
Oh, so my website, my website is Zander Golf.
ZANDER
GOLF golf.com, and everything, you can find everything there. And then if you just search for me on Skillest, you can find me there as far as being able to work with me remotely. And if you're in town, come see me at Stanford, Northern California.
Josh, always enjoy it. I just love just dropping in a quarter and letting you rip. This is the podcast of Grip It and Rip It. Just let you go.
Yeah, and I want to congratulate you on doing a fantastic job, and the fact that you're about to turn 1,000 with your episodes is an amazing accomplishment. And I always enjoy my time with you, and you're a great question asker, and you make it very easy to be on the other side of the mic, and someday we got to get out there and play some